Jake Morrison pushed through the heavy metal doors of Nebula's End Cantina, and the smell hit him right away. Smoke, alien alcohol, and something that reminded him of burnt rubber, mixed together in the thick air. The place was exactly what he expected from a cantina on Nexus Station. Dark, loud, and full of people who would shoot you for looking at them wrong. He walked to the bar, keeping his eyes forward and his hand close to his pistol. The bartender was a big creature with 4 arms and gray skin covered in scars. It looked at Jake with yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. "What do you want, human?" the bartender asked in broken Galactic Standard. "Information and a drink, something that won't kill me," Jake said, placing a few credits on the sticky bar top. The bartender grabbed a bottle and poured a dark liquid into a glass. "Information costs extra. I need to know about shipping routes through the Outer Rim. Safe ones." The bartender was about to answer when the cantina suddenly went quiet. Every conversation stopped. Even the loud music from the back corner seemed to get softer. Jake turned to see what caused the change. A woman walked through the doors, and Jake understood why everyone stopped talking. She was beautiful in a way that made his brain forget how to work properly. Her skin was a soft blue-silver color that seemed to shine with its own light. She was tall and moved with a grace that made it look like she was floating. Her curves were perfect, like someone had spent years designing the ideal female form. But it was not just her looks that made everyone stare. There was something else about her. Something that made every dangerous criminal in the cantina step back and lower their eyes. She walked through the crowd like she owned the place. And maybe she did. Jake watched her approach his table. She moved with confidence, but her eyes looked curious rather than threatening. When she reached him, she smiled, and Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "Do you know me, human?" she asked in perfect English. Her voice was soft but clear, with an accent he could not place. Jake looked at her face, searching his memory. She was definitely not human, but beyond that, he had no idea who she was. "Should I?" he asked. Her smile grew wider, and she seemed pleased by his answer. "May I sit?" Jake gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Be my guest." She sat down with fluid grace, and Jake noticed that everyone in the cantina was still watching them. Some looked scared, others confused. A few alien merchants in the corner were whispering to each other and pointing. "You really do not know me," she said, and there was genuine happiness in her voice. "Sorry to disappoint you," Jake said. "I am Jake Morrison, cargo hauler. I do not usually run in circles with—" He paused, not sure how to finish. "With women like me?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "With people who make entire cantinas go silent just by walking in," Jake said. She laughed, and the sound was like music. "You are honest. I like that." She signaled the bartender, who rushed over so fast he nearly tripped. "2 glasses of Aldarian wine, please." The bartender brought the drinks without asking for payment. Jake noticed the creature's hands were shaking as he set down the glasses. "So, mysterious lady, what should I call you?" Jake asked. "Sarah," she said. "And you are refreshing, Jake Morrison." "How so?" She paused and gestured around the cantina. "Like them." Jake looked around and saw that people were still staring, but now they were trying to be sneaky about it. "What are they so scared of?" "Perhaps they recognize me," Sarah said, taking a sip of her wine. "From where?" "Does it matter?" she asked. "Right now, I am just Sarah, talking to Jake in a cantina on Nexus Station. Is that not enough?" Jake studied her face. There was something sad in her eyes, despite her smile. "It is enough for me," he said. They talked for the next 2 hours. Sarah asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about why humans did such crazy things. She seemed fascinated by stories of human exploration and the risks people took to discover new places. "Your species is known for taking chances," she said. "The other races call you reckless." "Maybe we are," Jake said. "But that's how we learn. how we grow. You cannot discover anything new by playing it safe. And that is why you are out here, hauling cargo through dangerous space. Someone has to do it. Plus, the pay is good when you survive. Sarah laughed again. You make it sound simple. It is simple. See a job, do the job, get paid, move on to the next job. What if the job was dangerous? All jobs are dangerous out here. What if it was more dangerous than usual? Jake looked at her carefully. There was something in her voice, something that made him think this was not just casual conversation. Depends on the pay and the reason, and if the reason was to help someone who had no one else to turn to. Well, Jake said, I have always been a sucker for helping people in trouble. Sarah smiled, but this time it was different. There was relief in it, and maybe a little hope. I think I chose the right table to sit at. Before Jake could ask what she meant, a group of aliens in expensive clothes approached their table. They spoke in a language Jake did not recognize, but their tone was clearly respectful and urgent. Sarah listened, then said something back in the same language. The aliens bowed and left. Everything okay? Jake asked. Just business, Sarah said, but her relaxed mood was gone. She stood up and placed a small data chip on the table. I must go now, Jake Morrison, but I hope we will meet again soon. What is this? Jake asked, picking up the chip. Insurance, she said, in case you decide you want to help someone in trouble. Before Jake could ask more questions, Sarah was gone, moving through the crowd toward a different exit. Jake watched her go, noting how the other patrons still moved out of her way like she was royalty. He looked down at the data chip in his hand and wondered what he had just gotten himself into. Whatever it was, he had a feeling his simple cargo-hauling days were about to become much more complicated. Jake finished his drink, paid his tab, and headed back to his ship. As he walked through the station corridors, he could not shake the feeling that eyes were watching him from every shadow. He tucked the data chip safely in his pocket and picked up his pace. Something told him that meeting Sarah was going to change his life forever. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms blaring throughout Nexus Station. He rolled out of his bunk on the cargo ship Wanderer and checked his chronometer. 6 in the morning, station time. Way too early for this kind of noise. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside his ship to see what was happening. The docking bay was full of activity. Station security was running around with weapons drawn. Over the intercom, a mechanical voice kept repeating the same message. Nexus Station is now under lockdown. All ships remain docked. No departures authorized. Jake scratched his head and walked over to his neighbor, Captain Rex, whose ship was parked in the next berth. Rex was a Corlean trader who had been working these routes for 20 years. Hey Rex, what is all this about? Jake asked. Rex looked nervous. His green skin was paler than usual, and his 4 eyes kept darting around. Someone important went missing. Really important. The kind of important that makes the whole galaxy nervous. Before Jake could ask more questions, a formation of sleek silver ships dropped out of hyperspace right outside the station. Jake had never seen ships like these before. They were beautiful and deadly looking, with designs that seemed to flow like water, but gleamed like metal. Oh no, Rex whispered. Those are Zephyrian Royal Fleet ships. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Jake watched as one of the ships docked with the station. Within minutes, soldiers in fancy uniforms were marching through the corridors. They moved with military precision and wore armor that looked like it cost more than Jake's entire ship. A tall alien woman in a commander's uniform approached Jake's dock. She had the same blue-silver skin as Sarah, but her face was hard and cold. Behind her marched a squad of soldiers. You, she said, pointing at Jake, human. I am Admiral Kythara of the Zephyrian Royal Fleet. You will come with me for questioning. Jake raised his hands. Look, I do not know what this is about, but I am just a cargo hauler. I mind my own business. You were seen with Empress Zephyria 7 last night at the cantina, the Admiral said. You will tell me where she is. Jake felt his stomach drop. Empress who? Admiral Kythara stepped closer, and Jake could see anger burning in her yellow eyes. Do not play games with me, human. The woman you knew as Sarah is the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. She disappeared from her coronation ceremony yesterday. The last confirmed sighting was her speaking with you. Jake's mind raced. Sarah was an empress? No wonder everyone in the cantina had been scared. No wonder she moved like she owned everything. She did own everything, or at least a big part of the galaxy. I swear I did not know who she was, Jake said. She just said her name was Sarah. We talked for a few hours. Then she left. Did she give you anything? The Admiral demanded. Jake thought about the data chip in his pocket. Something told him not to mention it. Just conversation. Admiral Kythara stared at him for a long moment. Search his ship, she ordered her soldiers. The soldiers swarmed over the Wanderer like ants. They went through every compartment, every storage box, every system. Jake watched them destroy his organized cargo hold and felt his anger rising. Hey, be careful with that stuff, he yelled as one soldier knocked over a crate of medical supplies. Silence, Admiral Kythara snapped. This is a matter of galactic security. The Empress must be found before the Succession War begins. Succession War? Without the Empress to take the throne, the noble houses will fight for control. Billions will die. Entire star systems will burn. The Admiral's voice was cold and matter-of-fact. The soldiers finished their search and found nothing. Jake was grateful he had hidden the data chip in the lining of his jacket. Where would she go, human? Admiral Kythara asked. What did you talk about? Earth, mostly. She was curious about human culture. Jake was not lying. They had talked about Earth for most of the evening. The Admiral frowned. The Empress has no reason to go to your primitive homeworld. Jake shrugged. That is all I know. Admiral Kythara looked frustrated. She spoke into her communicator in the same language the aliens had used in the cantina last night. After a few minutes, she turned back to Jake. You will remain on this station until we find the Empress. If I discover you are lying to me, human, you will learn why the galaxy fears the Zephyrian Empire. The soldiers marched away, leaving Jake alone with his destroyed cargo hold. He spent the next hour cleaning up the mess and thinking about what he had learned. Sarah was not just beautiful and mysterious. She was one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. When he was sure no one was watching, Jake pulled out the data chip. He plugged it into his ship's computer and found a single file containing star charts and coordinates. The location was in a system he had never heard of, way out in the outer rim. There was also a short message in Sarah's voice. Jake, if you are hearing this, then they found me missing. The coordinates will lead you to safety. I pray you will understand that I never meant to put you in danger. But if you choose to help, you will be helping more than just me. The choice is yours. The system was 3 days away by hyperspace. It was in the middle of nowhere, near the border of unexplored space. Going there would be dangerous even without Imperial fleets hunting for him. But he kept thinking about Sarah's eyes in the cantina, the sadness he had seen there, and the way she had talked about having no one to turn to. She had been asking for help, and he had said he was a sucker for helping people in trouble. Jake made his decision. He powered up the Wanderer's engines and started his pre-flight checks. The station was still on lockdown, but Jake had not survived 10 years of cargo hauling by following rules. He waited until the patrol ships were on the far side of the station, then fired up his engines and shot out of the docking bay. Alarms started screaming immediately. Warning lights flashed as the station's defensive systems tried to lock onto his ship. Jake pushed the Wanderer into the asteroid field that surrounded Nexus Station. The big rocks would make it hard for the Imperial ships to follow him without risking damage to their fancy hulls. Behind him, he could see Admiral Kythara's ships trying to pursue, but they moved too carefully. They calculated every course correction, every maneuver. Jake flew by instinct, threading his way between asteroids that would crush his ship if he made one wrong move. It was insane. It was reckless. It was exactly the kind of thing humans were known for. And it worked. Jake cleared the asteroid field and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Zephyrian fleet behind. As the stars streaked past his viewports, he wondered what he would find at the coordinates Sarah had given him. Whatever it was, there was no turning back now. Jake dropped out of hyperspace in the Keros system, and immediately knew something was wrong. The planet below him was supposed to be a mining world, but he could see explosions lighting up the dark side. Ships were fleeing in all directions, and his scanners showed massive energy signatures that meant only one thing: war. He flew the Wanderer closer to the planet, staying in the shadow of one of its moons. His communication system crackled to life, with distress calls in a dozen different languages. Most of them were refugees, begging for rescue from the surface. Jake scanned the planet, looking for the specific coordinates from Sarah's data chip. When he found the location, he saw a small mining settlement that seemed quieter than the rest of the planet. Maybe that was where she was hiding. He landed the Wanderer in a canyon near the settlement, hidden from orbital scans. The planet's air was breathable, but tasted like metal and smoke. Jake grabbed his sidearm and a portable scanner, then started walking toward the coordinates. The mining settlement was full of refugees from other parts of the planet. Families huddled around small fires, their belongings packed into whatever containers they could find. Children cried while adults spoke in worried whispers. The whole place smelled of fear and desperation. Jake walked through the crowd, scanning faces and looking for Sarah. He found her in a medical tent, helping treat injured refugees. She had changed her appearance somehow. Her blue-silver skin was now a dull gray, and she looked smaller, more ordinary. But Jake recognized her eyes. "Sarah?" he said quietly. She looked up from bandaging a child's arm, and her face showed surprise, then relief. "Jake, you came. You said you needed help." Sarah finished with the child and led Jake outside the tent. "Follow me." She took him to a small cave in the canyon wall. Inside, the cave was set up like a command center, with communication equipment and star charts covering the walls. "This is where I have been working for the past year," Sarah said. "Coordinating refugee evacuations, funding medical supplies, organizing safe transport for families fleeing Zephyrian expansion." Jake looked at the charts. Red marks showed battles, blue marks showed refugee camps, and green marks showed safe transport routes. "You have been helping people escape from your own empire?" Sarah's disguise flickered, and for a moment Jake saw her true appearance underneath. "My empire has become something I never wanted it to be. The Noble Council uses my name to justify conquering worlds and enslaving populations. They tell everyone it is for the glory of Zephyria, but really it is just for their own power and wealth." "So, you ran away from your coronation?" "I ran away from becoming their puppet." Sarah sat down on a supply crate, looking tired. "Once I am officially crowned Empress, the Council will have complete control. They will use my authority to make their crimes legal." Jake sat across from her. "So, what is the plan?" "There are loyal commanders in the fleet who want to help me reform the Empire, but I need to reach them without the Council finding out." She pointed to a star chart showing a hidden base in the outer rim. "If I can get there, we can plan a real coronation, one where I take power on my own terms." Before Jake could answer, his communicator buzzed with an emergency signal. He checked the scanner and saw a fleet of ships dropping out of hyperspace above the planet. "Admiral Kythara found us." Sarah stood up quickly. "We need to leave, now." They ran back through the settlement, but it was too late. Zephyrian soldiers were already landing in dropships throughout the area. Jake could hear their weapons firing as they searched for the Empress. "This way," Jake said, leading Sarah toward his ship. But when they reached the canyon, they found Imperial soldiers waiting for them. "Empress Zephyria 7, called a familiar voice. Admiral Kythera stepped out from behind the soldiers, her weapon pointed at Sarah. "Your games end now." "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice taking on the authority of a ruler, "you will stand down. I serve the Zephyrian Empire, not a runaway girl playing with rebels." Admiral Kythera motioned to her soldiers, "Take her." Jake looked around the canyon. There were 20 Imperial soldiers, with advanced weapons and armor. His cargo ship was 50 meters away, but they would never make it across open ground. Then Jake remembered something from his military training on Earth. Sometimes you could not win with superior firepower. Sometimes you had to think differently. "Sarah, how good are these soldiers at adapting to unexpected situations?" he asked. "They are trained for formal combat, honor duels, fleet battles, organized warfare." "Why?" "Because humans do not fight fair." Jake pulled out his scanner and quickly mapped the canyon walls. The mining equipment had weakened the rock structure. If he could cause the right kind of explosion in the right place. "When I say run, head for that pile of mining equipment behind us," Jake whispered. He pulled out his sidearm and fired 3 quick shots, but instead of shooting at the soldiers, he aimed at the power core of an abandoned mining drill. The core overloaded and exploded, sending chunks of rock tumbling down the canyon wall. The soldiers scattered to avoid the falling rocks, their perfect formation breaking apart. Jake and Sarah ran for the mining equipment, while the Imperial troops tried to regroup. "Human tactics," Jake muttered as he activated an old excavation charge he found in the equipment pile. "Rule number 1, if you cannot outfight them, confuse them." He set the charge and threw it at another weak point in the canyon wall. The explosion caused more rocks to fall, creating a barrier between them and the soldiers. "This way," Jake called, leading Sarah up a mining path that curved around the canyon wall. Admiral Kythera was shouting orders, trying to get her soldiers organized, but they were trained for space combat and formal battles. Fighting in a collapsing canyon full of falling rocks was not something they had practiced. Jake and Sarah reached the Wanderer just as the Admiral's soldiers cleared the rock barrier. Jake fired up the engines, while Sarah strapped herself into the co-pilot seat. "Can this ship outrun Imperial vessels?" Sarah asked. "No," Jake said, pulling back on the controls, "but it can do things Imperial ships cannot." He flew the Wanderer straight up through the canyon, using the narrow walls to protect them from enemy fire. When they cleared the surface, Jake saw the Imperial fleet waiting for them in orbit. "Now what?" Sarah asked. Jake smiled and pushed the ship toward the planet's dense asteroid belt. "Now we show them why humans have a reputation for being crazy." He flew into the asteroid field at full speed, dodging and weaving between rocks the size of buildings. Behind them, the Imperial ships followed more carefully, trying not to damage their perfect hulls. "You are insane," Sarah said, watching asteroids flash past the viewports. "Probably," Jake agreed, "but insane works." They threaded through the asteroids for 20 minutes before Jake found what he was looking for, a gap in the Imperial formation. He pushed the Wanderer through a space barely wider than the ship itself, and escaped into hyperspace. As the stars streaked past, Jake looked at Sarah. "So, where exactly is this secret base?" Sarah gave him the coordinates and smiled. "Thank you, Jake Morrison. I think my loyal commanders are going to like you very much." The journey to the secret base took 2 days through hyperspace. Jake and Sarah spent most of that time talking in the small cargo hold that served as the Wanderer's common area. Sarah had dropped her disguise completely, and Jake found himself getting used to her alien beauty and the way she moved with natural grace. Tell me about human revolutions, Sarah said on the second day. She was sitting cross-legged on a supply crate, looking more like a curious student than a galactic empress. Jake thought about it while he worked on repairing some equipment that had been damaged during their escape. Well, we've had a lot of them. When people get tired of being told what to do by kings or governments they do not like, they fight back. But how do they succeed? How does a small group beat a powerful empire? They change the rules, Jake said. Instead of fighting big battles they cannot win, they fight small battles they can win. They use the empire's size against it. Big organizations move slowly and have trouble dealing with fast, unexpected attacks. Sarah listened carefully. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled for 1,000 years. Most people cannot imagine anything different. That is the problem with empires, Jake said. They get comfortable. They start to think they will last forever. So they stop paying attention to what people really want. And what do people want? Jake set down his tools and looked at her. To be safe. To have enough food and shelter for their families. To make their own choices about their lives. It is not complicated. The Noble Council says people need strong leaders to make difficult decisions for them. Maybe sometimes, Jake said. But who gets to decide what is best for someone else? And who watches the watchers? They talked about Earth's history, about governments that had fallen, and others that had survived by changing with the times. Sarah asked endless questions, and Jake found himself sharing stories he had never told anyone. On the second night, as they sat in the dim light of the cargo hold, Sarah asked a different kind of question. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had stayed on Earth? Jake thought about it. Sometimes. I probably would have gotten married, had kids, worked in an office somewhere, safe and boring. Do you regret leaving? Not really. I like seeing new places, meeting different people, even if some of them turn out to be runaway empresses. Sarah laughed. I never planned for any of this. When I was young, I thought being an empress meant wearing pretty clothes and attending ceremonies. What changed your mind? I saw what the empire was really doing to people. The families torn apart, the world stripped of everything valuable, the children sold into slavery. Her voice became quiet. I realized that pretty clothes and ceremonies do not matter if your people are suffering. Jake reached over and took her hand. Her skin was warm and softer than it looked. So you decided to fight back. I tried to work within the system first. I suggested reforms, asked for investigations, proposed new laws, but the council blocked everything. They told me I was too young and naive to understand how the galaxy really worked. So, you made your own system. I tried to help who I could, when I could, but it was never enough. Sarah looked down at their joined hands. Sometimes I think I should just accept the coronation and try to make small changes over time. Would that work? Probably not. The council has been planning for my reign since I was a child. They have everything prepared to limit my power. Before Jake could respond, the ship's proximity alarms started beeping. They had reached the coordinates of the secret base. Jake went to the cockpit and saw a hidden asteroid station. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid and would be invisible to most scanners. Several ships were docked to it, including some that looked like modified Zephyrian military vessels. "Welcome, Empress," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Commander Vrex. We have been waiting for you." They docked with the station, and Jake followed Sarah through an airlock into a busy command center. Aliens in military uniforms were working at computer terminals and monitoring communications. In the center of the room stood a tall Zephyrian male with scars covering half his face. "Commander Vrex," Sarah said formally. "Thank you for your loyalty." "Always, my Empress." Commander Vrex bowed, then looked at Jake with curiosity. "And you brought a human." "Jake Morrison saved my life," Sarah said. "He can be trusted." Commander Vrex nodded, then led them to a briefing room where several other alien officers were waiting. Jake recognized some of the species, but others were completely new to him. "The situation has changed since you disappeared," Commander Vrex said. "Admiral Kythara has declared martial law throughout the Empire. She claims you were kidnapped by human terrorists." "Terrorists?" Jake asked. "The Council is using your disappearance to justify a massive military expansion," another officer explained. "They are recruiting from every system and building new warships. They say it is to rescue you, but really they are preparing for the succession war." Sarah looked grim. "How much time do we have?" 3 days, Commander Vrex said. "After that the Council will declare you dead and choose a new heir from the noble families." "Then we attack now," said one of the officers. "Strike at the capital while they are not expecting it." "With what?" asked another. "We have 12 ships. They have 1,200. The room erupted in arguments as different officers proposed different plans. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others wanted to wait and gather more support. A few suggested that Sarah should surrender and try to negotiate with the Council. Jake listened to the arguing for 10 minutes before standing up. The room gradually went quiet as the alien officers noticed the human had something to say. "You are all thinking about this wrong," Jake said. "You are trying to win a war. But what Sarah really needs is legitimacy." "Explain," Commander Vrex said. "The Council's power comes from the fact that people believe they represent the Empress. But what if the people could hear from the real Empress directly?" Sarah understood immediately. "A public coronation." "Exactly, but not just any coronation. A broadcast that reaches every system in the Empire at the same time. Let Sarah speak directly to her people and tell them the truth about what the Council has been doing." "The Council controls all the communication networks," one officer objected. Jake smiled. "But they do not control all the ships. If we coordinate broadcasts from enough locations at the same time, we can override their systems before they can stop us." Commander Vrex leaned forward. "How many ships would we need?" "Maybe 20, positioned in key systems. Each ship broadcasts the same signal at exactly the same time. And if the Imperial fleet tries to stop us, that is the beauty of it," Jake said. "If they attack ships that are broadcasting the Empress's coronation, they prove that they are the real traitors." The room was quiet for a moment, as everyone thought about the plan. "It could work," Sarah said finally, "but we would need perfect timing and ships we can trust." Commander Vrex looked around the table at his officers. "Start making calls. We have 3 days to organize the biggest communication hack in galactic history." Jake grinned. Sometimes human ideas were crazy enough to work. 3 days later, Jake stood in the command center of Asteroid Base Omega, watching 24 screens showing different star systems across the Zephyrian Empire. Each screen represented a loyal ship in position to broadcast Sarah's coronation message. The plan was ambitious, dangerous, and completely dependent on perfect timing. "All ships report ready," Commander Vrex announced. "Broadcast equipment is functioning normally." Jake checked his improvised control system one more time. He had spent 3 days connecting human computer systems to Zephyrian communication networks. It should work, but should and would were two different things. Sarah stood in the center of the command center, wearing the traditional coronation robes of a Zephyrian empress. The blue and silver fabric seemed to glow under the station's lights. She looked beautiful and powerful, but Jake could see the nervousness in her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked her. "I have been preparing for this my whole life," Sarah said. "Just not like this. Remember, speak from the heart. People respond to truth." Commander Vrex received a message on his communicator. "Imperial fleet has been detected moving toward 3 of our broadcast positions. Admiral Kythara is trying to stop us." "Expected," Jake said. "That is why we have backup ships. Start the countdown." "All ships, this is Commander Vrex. Prepare for synchronized broadcast in 60 seconds. Jake watched the countdown timer on his screen. Around the galaxy, loyal Zephyrians were risking their lives to give their Empress a chance to speak to her people. He hoped they were making the right choice. 30 seconds, Commander Vrex announced. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped in front of the recording equipment. Jake, what if they do not believe me? They will, Jake said. Trust yourself. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting now. Jake activated the transmission system. Across the galaxy, 24 ships began sending the same signal to every communication network in the Zephyrian Empire. For the first time in history, every planet, every ship, every space station would hear the same message at the same time. Sarah began to speak. My people, I am Empress Zephyria 7, your rightful ruler. For the past week, you have been told that I was kidnapped by terrorists. This is false. I left my coronation ceremony because I could not in good conscience accept a crown that would be used to justify the suffering of innocent people. On the screens, Jake could see that the broadcasts were working. The signal was reaching all major population centers. But he also saw Imperial ships moving to intercept their broadcast vessels. Sarah continued. For too long, the Noble Council has used the authority of the throne to conquer peaceful worlds and enslave their populations. They have told you this was for the glory of Zephyria, but it was only for their own wealth and power. I will not be their puppet. One of the broadcast ships was forced to cut transmission as Imperial vessels surrounded it. But the other ships continued broadcasting, and the signal was already spreading through civilian communication networks. I stand before you now to reclaim the throne and reform our empire. No longer will we be conquerors who take what we want from weaker civilizations. Instead, we will be explorers who seek to learn from the diversity of the galaxy. Jake smiled as he watched the reactions on different worlds. Crowds were gathering in city centers to watch the broadcast. On the military channels, he could hear Imperial commanders asking for orders that were not coming. My first act as Empress will be to dissolve the current Noble Council and establish a new government based on representation from all our worlds, not just the powerful noble families. Every world that chooses to remain part of our empire will have a voice in how it is governed. Admiral Kythara's face appeared on the main communication screen. Commander Vrex, cease this illegal broadcast immediately. You are committing treason against the Empire. Admiral, Commander Vrex replied calmly, I serve the Empress, not the Council. My oath of loyalty was to her, not to you. On another screen, Jake could see that crowds were now cheering in the capital city. The broadcast was working. People were responding to Sarah's message. Furthermore, Sarah continued, I announced the establishment of the Terran Zephyrian Cultural Exchange. Humanity has shown us that strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. They have taught us that real leadership means serving your people, not ruling over them. Admiral Kythara looked shocked. You cannot be serious. Humans are a primitive species. Jake stepped into view of the communication pickup. Admiral, this primitive human just helped organize the largest coordinated broadcast in galactic history, using equipment I built in 3 days. Maybe you should reconsider your assumptions. The Admiral stared at Jake for a moment, then looked back at the screens showing celebrations across the Empire. Her expression slowly changed from anger to understanding. The people support the Empress, she said quietly. The broadcast is working. Admiral, Sarah said, her voice taking on Imperial authority, you swore an oath to serve the Zephyrian Empire and protect its people. Continue to serve the Council and become an enemy of your own people, or honor your oath and help me build a better empire. The communication channel was quiet for a long moment. Jake held his breath as he watched the Admiral think. Around the galaxy, other Imperial commanders were making similar choices. Finally, Admiral Kythara spoke. All Imperial vessels, stand down. The rightful Empress has spoken. Cheers erupted in the command center. On the screens, Jake could see that other Imperial commanders were following the Admiral's lead. The military was switching sides. My people, Sarah concluded her speech. Today we begin a new chapter in Zephyrian history. Together, we will build an empire based on cooperation instead of conquest, on respect instead of fear. This I promise you, as your Empress. The broadcast ended, and Jake shut down the transmission equipment. Around them, the command center buzzed with activity as messages poured in from across the empire. Noble houses were pledging loyalty, planetary governors were declaring support, and even some council members were asking to negotiate. Sarah walked over to Jake and took his hands. "We did it," she said. "You did it," Jake said. "You gave people a choice, and they chose you. I could not have done this without your help." Sarah smiled, and for the first time since Jake had met her, she looked truly happy. "I want you to be my first ambassador to Earth. Help me build this bridge between our peoples." Jake looked around the command center, at the aliens who had risked everything to help their Empress, at the screens showing celebrations across the galaxy. 3 weeks ago he had been a simple cargo hauler with no plans beyond his next delivery. "Do you know me?" Sarah asked, repeating the question from their first meeting. "I know the woman who chose her people over her comfort, and the Empress who chose change over tradition. I know Sarah, and I know Zephyria. And yes, I would like to know them both better." 6 months later, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the Zephyrian Imperial Palace, watching the first meeting between human and Zephyrian diplomats. The woman who had once been a mysterious stranger in a cantina was now leading one of the most progressive reforms in galactic history. Sometimes the best adventures started with a simple question: "Do you know me?" And sometimes the answer changed everything.